So we continue with our 11th session, which is about inclusive higher education, the impact of COVID-19. We will start with our keynote speaker, who is Mrs. Silvia Florea, Doctor Habilitationis, Professor in Philology and Linguistics, Director of the UNESCO Chair in Quality Management of Higher Education and Lifelong Learning since 2011. Mrs. Florea is a professor in Lucian, Blaga, University of Sibiu, where she has been working since 1999 as teaching staff, while in 1994 to 1999, she was a university assistant. She has received several research grants and scholarships, as for example, from Italy, from Finland, while she was senior postdoctoral Fulbright research grant in USA. She has received the Diploma of Excellence and Gold Medal for promoting arts education and Distinction Fulbright Ambassador awarded by the USA-Romania Fulbright Commission. Professor Florea has written 10 books, 8 alone and 2 co-authored, and 53 contributions published in accredited peer-reviewed national and international reviews and many other articles and papers. Professor Florea, please take the floor in order to give us a speech on inclusive education and how higher education institutions are responding to the coronavirus crisis.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation you have provided for me. Good afternoon, everybody, and I'm really honored to meet you, even if only virtually. Can you please see me on the screen?
Yes, we can see you very well.
Okay, I'm going to share.
Very well.
A small,
yes.
I hope.
Yes, we see it.
Okay, okay.
So we are ready.
Thank you. My understanding is that I have about 20 minutes or 30 minutes. So I will try to cram everything I have to say, which is a lot, into this span of time. So just briefly, because I'm also representing my UNESCO chair here, allow me to say a few things about the UNESCO chair I'm running. The UNESCO chair is in quality management of higher education and lifelong learning. Basically what we do is the chair gives international visibility to the activities carried out within our institution. Those activities, of course, that meet the quality assurance standards and requirements of UNESCO under the broad perspective of continuous training and learning, lifelong learning, and quality assurance in higher education. At the same time, my UNESCO chair promotes and puts into practice the UNESCO objectives and goals. The previous speaker has mentioned the Millennium Development Goals, and now the Sustainable Development Goals. Through our own activities and specific projects, based on collaboration through education, culture, communication, and information between universities. The main objective of the UNESCO chair is to provide and support the necessary actions to strengthen the link between graduates and employers, increase the quality of learning and skills provided by higher education in the country, provide skills for lifelong learning, and improve the social insertion of graduates on the labor market. We focus very much on research, also on the development of studies and projects within what I would call a very dynamic forum of researchers. We continuously have invited speakers like you do, and dissemination campaigns of the best practices in the field. I would also like to add the fact that out of a total of 839 UNESCO chairs worldwide, and this was the last statistics I could get as of the 20th of April 2021. The UNESCO chair of my university, the UNESCO chair in quality management and lifelong learning, is the only one in Romania and Europe on quality management and lifelong learning, and operates alongside only 34 other UNESCO chairs in the whole world that are focused on higher education. So this is basically what we do. Without further ado, I would like to start the presentation. So basically, I will be referring on how higher education universities are coping with the coronavirus crisis. Now, we all know that. But before that, I would like to say that I've also added the European Union flag next to the UNESCO's logo, because in my presentation, I will focus on the European situation. Okay. The main talking points I will touch upon are lessons learned and activities of higher education institutions, how they have changed post COVID-19, because we have already had this coronavirus for a year or so now. I will briefly present the context, and then I will consider the changes or the consequences for cross-border education of the coronavirus pandemic, issues related to international students, and their challenges for the coming academic year. These challenges, of course, bring about a number of changes in what regards the future of international cooperation in teaching, learning, and research. And if I have time, I will focus on a few effects of the crisis, the impact of the crisis, and mention a few good practices. Now, just by way of context, I would like to say that the coronavirus pandemic, we all know, has resulted in temporary physical closures of higher education institutions around the world, not just in Europe, but around the world. And in higher education, approximately 220 million students globally have been affected due to the disruption caused by COVID-19. And this has left policymakers and universities with unprecedented challenges, such as how to mitigate learning losses, how to deploy remote learning, how to safely reopen educational institutions, and how to ensure that underrepresented, vulnerable, and disadvantaged learners are not left behind. And I think that we can all agree that the COVID-19 pandemic has already had an unprecedented impact on higher education worldwide. And this impact has been manifest in virtually all aspects of its functioning, particularly in the last academic year. The pandemic transformed the way teaching took place, an accelerated transformation that was already taking place in the form of online learning and teaching. Some of the higher education institutions have already moved from traditional learning and teaching to virtual and online learning and teaching. And the pandemic actually accelerated or worked as an accelerator of this online learning and teaching. Then the pandemic has also direct impact on how research is carried out, on university operations, in terms of, think of only in terms of campus closures and the shift to online learning. It has already had an impact on university governance, with management staff needing to take a range of emergency decisions, because all universities were faced with this decision-making process, and the university leaders had to make quick decisions and allow enough or additional flexibility in many areas of activity. And the pandemic has also highlighted the importance of universities' community engagement. Now, let us move on to what the impact of COVID-19 was on teaching. And I need to I cannot. Okay, I'm not sure you can, maybe my internet connection, can you hear me? Maybe my internet connection is unstable, but even if I can't move the screens and the slides, I can, I would like to continue my talking. So let us now try to look at the impact of COVID-19 on teaching and learning. I think we should look at this from a number of perspectives. From the university's perspective, the sudden move to emergency remote teaching was made by virtually all universities. And in general, let's say that the transition to online learning was considered successful by university leaders. It was considered successful, but maybe it was not that successful. Let's start on a positive idea and say that most universities provided some sort of support to the teaching and learning process in the form of training and technical support. But some universities have faced problems with their capacity for delivering online classes in terms of technology and tools. Think of the fact that university academics were not all prepared to teach online. Students were not prepared to learn from a digital platform. Okay, let's look a little bit at the teaching staff perspective. Now, from their perspective, the academics somehow managed to successfully adapt their teaching material developed for online teaching and online formats. But I would like to point to a very important thing here, the distinction between the resulting emergency remote teaching, because that was an emergency remote teaching, and online learning, which is emergency remote teaching involves transforming on-site classes to a virtual mode without making changes to the curriculum or the methodology. This was in some, let's say, in most cases, successful for universities. The main form of teaching during the pandemic, let's say, or let's consider only the European universities, was via live-streamed lectures in real time. And about 74% presentations were sent to students, and asynchronous pre-recorded lectures were made available online digital platforms. Now, this switch to emergency remote teaching was all the more difficult in the fields which have a practical component. Think of only the clinical medicine, of veterinary studies, of the arts, and so on. So while we consider it was a story of success, in fact, let's say, in some cases, it wasn't very successful because not all European universities managed to do this in time. And the pandemic found them totally unprepared. Now, from the students' perspective, a significant proportion of students encountered serious challenges in their learning. Almost half of all students believed that their academic performance changed for the worse. Since on-site classes were canceled and more than half of the students reported having a larger workload since the transition to online teaching. Now, I'm sure that at least half of the participants to this meeting are students. And if I ask any of you, to what extent has the transition to online teaching been successful, I'm sure that at least half of you will report that if going online was easy, that also meant that you, students, had a larger workload to deal with. And this, I think, goes the same, holds true for academics as well. I, for myself, teach online, but I work twice as much as I would do in a traditional teaching format. Okay, then access to online communication tools and the internet unfortunately still remains a challenge for some students. Not all students have a satisfactory level of digital skills. The experience of studying during the pandemic also resulted in new challenges to students psychological and emotional well-being. And this has been an aspect often or very often overlooked, because students during the pandemic often faced, or most students, or some students faced negative emotions such as boredom, anxiety, frustration, and anger. So this is, let's say, the impact of the pandemic on the teaching and learning. Now, on my slide, I have on my PowerPoint, I have a slide on international mobility, student mobility, international education, but I don't think I can move the slides right now because of my internet connection. However, I will try to continue my my talk. The ways in which international education has changed is obvious. The number of international students, the number of outgoing and incoming mobility programs dropped by a significant percentage. But I would like to say that in the medium term, let's say until 2025, I think that there is even greater uncertainty and concern about the range of possible impacts of COVID-19 on international student mobility. Because if universities are forced to limit international student mobility and offer virtual or at least blended alternatives, the key question will be, in my opinion, how can universities ensure added value for international students? How can universities compensate for the loss of physical interaction in the host country? There is no interaction. Think of the student perspective. It is uncertain at this time whether such forms of study program and degrees will be perceived as having the same, if you want, market value. We're not sure whether students will be ready to pay the same level of tuition fees for such a degree. And I think that if international student mobility does not return to pre-COVID levels, the financial impact on universities and higher education systems in most European countries, and in what concerns most international students globally, will also change significantly, and these this financial impact could be severe. Of course, there is a broader risk that the pandemic will have, and again, I'm referring to the medium-term impact, let's say until 2025. The pandemic will have detrimental effects, I think, on other aspects of internationalization, such as cross-border research, cross-border collaborations between universities, as well as campus internationalization, which this campus internationalization, here I'm referring to the culturally diverse environment at the university. So I think that, you know, to put it differently, while we have managed to respond, we as universities, while universities have managed to somehow respond urgently to the COVID crisis, I think that there are a number of challenges that lie ahead of higher education institutions, and universities will have to address these issues. By way of conclusion, if you want, the title of my presentation is also inclusive education. I have chosen to refer to the impact of COVID-19 on, let's say, the social dimension of higher education. And by social dimension, I refer to ensuring equity of access, participation, completion of higher education, with, let's say, a special focus on students from underrepresented, disadvantaged, and vulnerable groups. Somehow we think of the COVID, of the coronavirus crisis and pandemic as being all-inclusive, but it is not. I think that the main challenges faced by students during the pandemic are those challenges related to studying conditions, access to a quiet place of study, for example, or access to equipment. Not everybody has 2 or 3 laptops, or one or a laptop at home. Some students access their online courses on the phone. Not everybody has a reliable internet connection. There is a thunderstorm here, which is why my internet connection is unstable. But that happens to everybody. Not all students have access to course study materials. Not all students have confidence in using online platforms. Then there are a lot of other challenges related to funding. Let us think of the fact that a lot of students have been confronted with the loss of employment, with the loss of income of their parents, who can no longer support them to study. Most students, or some students, or a good many students are facing difficulties in meeting living costs, in having issues with receiving scholarships. At my university, for example, students filed a complaint with the university saying, okay, if we are learning on an online platform, why are we still paying these tuition costs? Because we're no longer using the university electricity. We're no longer using the university's study spaces. Why? Okay, the university should decrease the tuition fees, and partly they're right. Then also so when we think of the social dimension of the impact of the pandemic, we also think, or should think of or about the challenges related to well-being. And here I'm thinking of a certain lack of supported social networks. Some pervasive or prevailing feelings of frustration, anxiety, boredom. Students are bored with academic activities. If you have 8 classes in a day, and you have to sit as a student, and you have to sit in front of a computer for 8 hours, who can do that? Nobody will do that. Most students mute their mics and close their videos, their video image, and do other stuff, because or are involved in other activities because they are bored. So these are all situations. By inclusive higher education during the pandemic, I'm referring to all these things. And by way of conclusion, I think that there is cause for, at least in its medium term, there is cause for great concern on inequalities in access and participation in higher education. I think that there should be measures in place that universities must take. In what regards a certain prevention of deterioration in educational inequality. The switch to online learning is likely to exacerbate existing educational inequalities. So while we may think that digitally or going digitally, all higher education is inclusive, I beg to differ and say that due to lack of access to learning resources, lack of a suitable home learning environment, and insufficient support, the one I have already mentioned, from parents, maybe, you know, if they have lost income and can support materially students, then these losses will result in learning losses and in a certain disengagement from education. So I would like to invite you to take my presentation as a cautionary, if you want, signal to some measures that higher education institutions globally, not just European, will have to take to prevent and counteract the COVID-19 pandemic. And I will stop here because I have already taken too much of your time. Let me see. Yes, can you? So let's go. Yeah, now I can see the internet connection is better now. So these were the points I have already touched. But let me end on this quotation by Winston Churchill. We should never waste a crisis. We should learn from it. Thank you very much. If you have questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you very much, Professor Florea, for your presentation. And I think you have touched everybody, either as teachers or professors or students. I think everybody is sympathetic to what you said and feels like being pressed and depressed from the coronavirus. And now we will turn to Mrs. Christina Zourna, who is a PhD researcher at the Department of Educational and Social Policy at the University of Macedonia. And she will present to us a study that was done in the University of Macedonia with a multivariate mixed methods research. So what are the undergraduate students' experiences of changes enforced due to COVID-19 at the University of Macedonia? Mrs. Zourna, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Anagnostopoulou, and good evening to everyone today, to the last day of the UNESCO seminar. I'm going to share my screen. Yes. Okay, share, and I'll start right immediately. Let's see.
Yes.
Yes, I need to start this one, and okay. Now, undergraduate students' experiences of the changes enforced due to COVID pandemic. It is a multivariate mixed methods research of last year when the COVID pandemic erupted, let's say. We just thought that we had to document all the unprecedented situation. The researchers team is Ioanna Papavasiliou, an associate professor in lifelong career guidance and counseling. Nikos Koutsoupyas, an associate professor in applied informatics and data analysis and a member of the governance and ICT lab at the University of Macedonia also. Ekaterini Papakota, a psychologist and career counselor at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, and Christina Zourna, myself, mathematician, a PhD candidate researcher at the Department of Educational and Social Policy. When things started to change in Greece and worldwide, we felt that we had to witness the once-in-a-lifetime situation. We had never experienced something like that and on such level. So we decided to make a research about our students at the university. But 2 weeks after we decided to start the research, the university announced a competition for PhD candidate researchers on any research about the COVID impact. So we decided to take part in that competition too, and that was an extra motivation for us. But we had to face a lot of challenges. First of all, within our team cooperation. Coming from different disciplines, we had different perspectives and different points of view. We had to negotiate a lot and almost at every step of the research. We were facing an unprecedented situation. The research had a wide scope. We wanted to document and assess the experience of our undergraduate students concerning psychology issues, career management skills, and coping skills. We had big data to collect, to analyze, and to comment, and to connect, and in a short time interval, because the time was really short for us. The methodology, a mixed multivariate research approach in 3 phases, was something new for the 4 of us. Neither of us had alone proceeded such a research with this schedule, but it was one challenge we were willing to take. The research flow of the tasks was another challenge because each phase had to be completed, had to give results and inform the schedule of the next steps. And the time was our only rival because it was the end of spring semester 2020. The examination assessment period was too close. The summer break was ahead of us, and the competition had a deadline of August 31st. But to be honest, what we obtained were a lot of benefits, especially for the researcher team, and we'll see about the university. First of all, we learned about from each other's expertise. We practice within our team what we teach our students, cooperation. And we really developed personal and interpersonal skills. And as for the competition, we won the 4th prize, which was something good. As for the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that UNESCO has set, our research addresses the 4th one, quality education, the 10th, reduced inequalities, and the 11th, sustainable cities and learning communities. The purpose of the research was to study how the UOM undergraduate students experienced, dealt with, and coped with the changes from face-to-face on campus to synchronous online education settings due to the COVID pandemic restriction measures, and also to write down and document and report our students' suggestions for a more inclusive education system in the future. The tools we used for the research was a survey questionnaire with multiple choice at 5-point Likert scale questions and open-ended embedded questions, focus group online discussions, and individual semi-structured interviews, also online due to the measures. Our target population was the students of all 8 departments at the University of Macedonia. You can see on the chart on the left that the majority came from the Education and Social Policy Department and the International European Studies Department, where most of the team work. But we had also participants from all departments. The age range of the sample was from 18 to 25, with the majority 18 to 23. As you all know, the studies at the faculties in the University of Macedonia last for 4 years. The undergraduate studies last for 4 years. This is why we had a small percentage of students in the 5th or more. The gender was mainly, well, female, because of the vast majority from the 2 schools just mentioned. And in the sample also participated students with some disabilities, hearing disabilities, sight issues, also ASD, autism spectrum disorders, etc. Their digital skills in majority were low or basic. The availability of digital equipment, if they owned personal computer or a laptop or a mobile phone, 82.9%. 13.8% had no digital equipment at the time that the online education started, March 2020. And 3.2% shared their computer or their mobile phone data. During confinement, the majority of the students returned home, because the students in Thessaloniki don't come from the city, they come from other cities, other villages around Greece. So when the universities closed down, they had to return home. And they lived with the family, parents and siblings, 83%. And there were some others who stayed alone or with roommates. And all this had an impact on the online education that started in March. After receiving 621 questionnaires, we had more questions than answers. So we decided to deepen our understanding and focus on the answers on certain questions of the questionnaire. And we decided to proceed to individual interviews and focus groups of students, selected according to the maximal variation principle and the criteria already mentioned, and also 3 more, if they were working parallel to their studies, if they belong to a vulnerable group or face some kind of disability, and their preference of learning modality, face-to-face, synchronous online, or a combination of the 2. In the interviews, we asked them how they experienced the changes from face-to-face on campus to synchronous online teaching and learning, how they reacted emotionally and practically, how did they cope with the changes, if there were any benefits that they perceived from the synchronous online education, and how they imagined the future of online education the years to come. As for the data analysis methods, we let data speak. We performed multivariate analysis through free and open source software with the help of the governance and ICT lab. And also for the text of over 150 pages of the open-ended answers and the focus groups and the individual interviews, verbatim transcribed texts, we used constant comparative methods as in grounded theory. And the results could be, the major results could be categorized in 3 categories. MCA and HCA, which were the multiple correspondence analysis and hierarchical cluster analysis mentioned before, revealed 3 groups of students with distinct characteristics, and I will explain in a moment what I mean by that. The second category are advantages and disadvantages of the 2 situations of before COVID and after COVID, and the suggestions for the future. What about the clusters of students? In the initial sample, there were 621 students. Of these, 131 formed the cluster 1, which is the red color in the cluster plot on the right of your screen. These are the older students, 24 or older. They are highly digitally skilled. They owned the necessary equipment to follow the online education, and they expressed positive feelings towards the changes. They seemed to be quite flexible, they integrated change, and they managed to balance work, family duties, and their studies. And these are in favor of online education settings. And in their own words, I was very pleased with the change. In just 4 days, everything was set up again. I missed no lessons. As I worked from home, my schedule was quite flexible. I participated in more classes without timetable restrictions. Online education has come to stay. For a person with disabilities like me, it means equity, fairness, and motivation. As for cluster 2, now the color green on the plot, 342, the majority students, age 19 to 23, the middle range. They expressed no extreme feelings, not extreme sadness, not extreme joy or enthusiasm. What they did, they took a step back and they compared critically the benefits of both modalities. They're standard digitally skilled. They faced some shortage of equipment or suitable conditions for studying because they were at home with siblings and noise and all that. But they managed to reestablish balance in their lives. They took advantage of the chaos around them, took risks, adapted easily, and integrated change after all. So these are in favor of a combination of the 2 modalities. And as they said, I could never have expected that our university would react so fast and so well to the sudden situation. I was forced to manage things, but I learned to enjoy it. I usually keep my feelings to the middle, no extremes. By using both modalities accordingly, the university could meet every student's needs. And as for cluster 3, the blue color, 148 students, these were the younger ones, first or second year of their studies. They had strong negative feelings. They lost autonomy. They lost their independence. They had to return home. They lost the essence of being a university student. And these are strongly in favor of face-to-face education. I felt isolated, distracted, abandoned. I miss experiential sessions and workshops. I miss physical contact with my instructors and peers. I've learned only a fraction of what I would have if education were provided face-to-face. Being a university student is much more than just learning academic subjects behind a screen in your room. Overall, there was more than 76% of satisfaction or serious satisfaction with the university response to COVID measures. And the quality of participation also was quite good. 72% participated from the start without problems, 18% started but eventually stopped, and we'll see why. 6% didn't participate in the beginning, but they gradually did, and 3% didn't participate at all. So what the students said, they highlighted the advantages of the synchronous online education from top to bottom. Easiness of participation from their personal space, low costs getting to class, time and money, ease of use of online platforms, only third, increased student participation in online classes. This is what the students noted. And some disadvantages, lack of physical contact with instructors and peers, fewer group activities, less nonverbal communication, less discussion and dialogue in class. Less dialogue in the universities. Let's think about this. And now they face also difficulties during online education, difficulty in concentrating, too much crowded living place, no opportunity of being alone, too anxious due to confinement conditions. Overall, the modality preference was 40% in favor of face-to-face education, 46.9% a combination of the two, and only 12.5% synchronous online education. And what about inclusion? That our session is about inclusion in the educational environment. Well, we have two views, contradictory. One view is that face-to-face is more inclusive. It allows less advantaged students due to financial problems or disabilities participate in true learning experiences. And down here, it can take place anywhere, anytime, without time restrictions, technical problems, or any complications. And the next view is contradictory and says synchronous online is more accessible. And they say, no stress at all. My next lesson is just a click away. No need to travel to get to campus. No more delayed and embarrassing entrances in auditoriums. And some suggestions for the future. Well, the majority of the students suggested that a suitable combination of the two modalities would be most beneficial. Of course, it depends on the academic subject, says a student. How can you manage a successful choir rehearsal online? But a combination could use positive elements of both modalities and meet the students' various needs. And what is most important for us and for policymakers is the last one, allowing students to be independent in their own pace. They will take responsibility of their learning. They will take initiatives. They will design their studies, improve their skills, and extend their careers. So the conclusion of our research is that the COVID unprecedented situation provided a unique opportunity for universities, instructors, students also to embrace change, innovation, and digital transformation, and a unique opportunity to develop personal and career skills. However, we have some questions that have not been answered. Did everyone benefit from the situation? Is inclusion still a dream to fulfill? Should this urgent situation be continued? It was urgent last March, but after 1 year after, face-to-face education has not started yet on campus. What are the needs of all stakeholders that have to be met by any new policies? And we have some ideas on that. Final ideas. For the younger students, what is important? Keeping their autonomy, keeping their independence. Socializing, connecting, networking are as important as being able to participate regardless of financial status. For the older students, participating in the studies should not be hindered by work duties or family obligations. And for the students with disabilities, they demand equity, fairness, and serious motivation by the universities and by the Greek state in order to continue studying and lifelong learning. Now, if you would like to read our full paper of the research, here are two links where you can download the full paper. I would write the links on the chat. And also there will be a link for the GICT Lab where you can ask for more information about the analysis methods used there. Thank you for your active listening, and you can also contact the research team by email, or you can write your questions on the chat. Thank you very much, and good luck with the rest of the seminar. Thank you.
So thank you, Mrs. Zourna. It was a very optimistic presentation in the end at last, that we should embrace change. And I think this was the conclusion of Professor Silvia Florea at the end. So everybody needs to give us an optimistic message. How many students were there?
621 questionnaires.
How many?
621.
Excellent. So please address your questions to Professor Florea and to Mrs. Zourna. Since we do have time, We have some 5 minutes before the break. And this is something that interests all of us. It's about COVID-19 response in higher education. So do you think, Mrs. Zourna and Mrs. Florea, that we're going to have hybrid classes in September? What is your feeling?
Speak first, I don't know.
Well, if Professor Florea would like to answer first.
I don't know what they do in Romania. Well, in Greece, I hope so, because if face-to-face education cannot start again, or depending on the measures, hybrid, surely, yes, they should.
Hybrid or only face-to-face?
At the University of Macedonia, we have already hybrid lessons because we have the online component, campus. I don't know if it has changed the name, that the professors upload important presentations or PDFs or files for the students to complement the online or the face-to-face lesson. But the face-to-face education on campus, and it's not only the subjects. The problem is not only the subject. The student has to live as a student. They need the academic environment. And this is what the students told us. Being a student is not just learning about an academic subject. It's living the whole academic environment, networking. And this is so important for their life afterwards. Because you leave the university and then you're alone in a whole world. You have to make connections before graduating and getting close to the professors, to your peers, who will be your cooperation in the future. And also Erasmus programs. We have to get everything started again.
There was a catastrophe for Erasmus projects. Nobody could really go to another member state and to study. That was a lost generation for Erasmus projects. But we
a lot of projects went virtual, went online also. But it's so different than being online in a program for 5 days and compared to being in a different country and living in that country also and getting to know the country. It's not only the program. A lot of things are lost, but I hope in the future that students will cope with the new situation and they will try to find new paths. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. And the Erasmus projects are not only knowledge, it's not only curriculum, it is also to learn intercultural competences. Mm-hmm. And this is quite important for the rest of our lives. So we hope that things will start again. And we have a question which was sent only to me. What about the students with disabilities and suggestions for their studies? Who would like to answer? Christina?
She has the future plans for the students with disabilities, suggestions according to your research. The students with disabilities were in favor of online, some were in favor of online education because it was easier for them to combine with the rest of their lives. But others were in favor of face-to-face because of the contact with the professors and the peers. I don't know what the university will do. What we did was to report, all this research. We documented the report and we gave it to the university officials. So it's not to us, it's not for us to decide. We hope that the university officials will listen to what the students have to say. And the whole research, I have to write the links on the chat in just a second. And you will see that there are a lot of suggestions. It's not only what we presented here. So you can download the full report. And since there are students here, you can see for yourselves what the university will do in the near future. We surely hope that our research will help to this direction.
Well, we thank our speakers, Mrs. Silvia Florea and Mrs. Christina Zourna, for their presentations on very topical subjects. And I would like also to thank the professors and the whole team of the University of Macedonia who made all this research and was presented by you, Mrs. Zourna. And with these words, the time has come for a break of 10 minutes until we get connected with Brazil. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And see you in 10 minutes.